So, good afternoon, everyone, especially to our dear professor in social professional issues, Mr. Manzanero. So, I am the presenter for today's session in social professional issues. So, let's have a little recap first of what Ms. Jean Arbes discussed to her presentation last week. So, she discussed about the context of censorship and intellectual property that explain the intellectual property rights and why we need to promote and protect intellectual property rights. Also, she talked about methods of computer software protection, which covers copyright, patents, and trademarks. So now I am going to discuss the next 5 topics in Module 3. But before we head on to the discussion, let me first introduce myself. So hello everyone, I am Aaron Embriones from GSMP1 and I am your presenter for today's session in Social Professional Issues course. So this is the topical overview of what I am going to discuss today. So first, we have the application of the principle of fair use of proprietary information in digital formats. Second is the free software movement and the open source initiative. Third is the impact of censorship and freedom of speech on IT. Fourth is the limitation to freedom of expression on the internet. And lastly, the fifth one is the current intellectual property issues. So first, we were going to discuss the first topic, which is the application of the principle of fair use of proprietary information in digital formats, with the subtopic of ways for protection of digital or intellectual property. So in this topic, we are going to discuss the different ways on how we can protect the digital or intellectual property and what are the example of it. So let's move to the actual discussion. So let's start with these two technologies, which is the digital rights management, or what we call the DRM. Second is the technical protection measures, or the TPM. So digital rights management is designed to ensure copyright protection by identifying and safeguarding content. So this ensures creators receive payment for access, helps prevent unauthorized users from accessing the content. So this technology is designed to protect the content of those services we have access. So meaning it controls who can only access those content. So we as a paying users, we can have only the authority to view, download, or use it. Second is the technical protection measures, or the TPM. So the TPM is also the same as what the digital rights management do. So it also allows publishing companies in securing and protecting content such as the music, text, and video from unauthorized use. If an author wishes to collect fee for use of his or her work, then DRM technology can be used. So this is the example of where we can use or apply the digital rights management. So it is usually used in streaming videos or music services like this. So you can see every type of subscription. So they include the number of accounts that can access that subscription. So if you want to solo your subscription, you can choose this individual because it says here that one premium individual account only can handle that premium subscription. Next is if you want to share the premium subscription to other person, you can choose this duo because it shows here that two premium accounts can access this premium subscription. Or if you want many members to access the premium subscription that consists of 6 accounts including you, you can choose this family subscription because it shows here that up to 6 premium accounts it can handle this premium subscription. So the mini and the student premium subscription is the same as the individual. So it shows here that one mobile only premium account, and for the student is one verified premium account only. So next is so you can see that there's a limitation of who can only access to the Spotify services. So if you subscribe to their premium subscription, DRM, it makes sure that the users cannot share accounts for services like these with an unlimited number of friends or family members, because their goal is they need to protect the information of the customer. And this is not only for Spotify, but you can also encounter this to other streaming video and music services like Netflix, Apple Music, or HBO Max. So next is cryptography. So cryptography, it is the process of encryption of and decryption of information. So cryptography encrypts information to make it unreadable, allowing only legitimate users to decrypt it. So it protects content during transmission but offers no protection after decryption. So cryptography is like a method that protects the content during the transmission or distribution to prevent the authorized access of data. So it can only be decrypted after transmission. So meaning there is no provided protection. So it could potentially be copied, shared, or modified if other people have access to the device of the authorized user. So right here is the example of the cryptography, which is the Gcash app. So as you can see, the information here is changed into asterisk because they encrypt the information of the customer to make it unreadable. So for example, if I'm going like to transfer money to Miss Jaime, so those information of Miss Jaime would be encrypted. Like if I'm going to send proof of payment, so this information is unreadable, but after that transaction, this data would be decrypted on my device or in my Gcash app. So meaning if this decrypted on my device, so I am the authorized user that can view and verify the details of that transaction. So next is digital watermark technology. So digital watermarking embeds a unique signal or pattern into multimedia works for identification and protection. So it includes a generator, embedder, and detector or decoder, allowing authorized users to remove watermarks with specific algorithms. So this technology, we insert a unique digital watermark into a multimedia to identify and protect the content. So it prevents the content to be stolen by someone or to use it for reselling without the permission of the authorized users. So right here is the example of digital watermark technology. Like in TV networks, they use watermarks during live broadcasts to protect their content from being copied illegally. So aside from their network logo, they also include a unique identifier or a timestamp. So like those who record the movies in cinemas with cell phone or any devices, it is like an act of piracy. So I think one of the solutions to prevent this illegal activity is to use a digital watermark technology, because as what I have said, it can track the leaks of the content if it's shared online. Next is digital signature technology. So a digital signature incorporates details such as the sender or receiver's identity, date, time, and unique codes into digital products. So this ensures the authenticity of documents. It provides also a verifiable fingerprint and helps prevent illegal copying. So it is a technology wherein we attach identifying details like sender, data, or unique codes to a digital product to make sure that it is the original one and to prevent it from unauthorized copy. So it 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 is act as the fingerprint that verifies the origin of the document. So one example of where we can use the digital signature technology is on contract agreement or document right here. So that involves digital signing. So what are the purpose of it? So first, we have the authentication. So we can easily determine the identity of the person or people who sign to those documents or contracts. Second is integrity. So digital signature, it makes sure that the content of the contract has not been altered after it has been signed. So for example, there is someone wants to change the content of the contract. For example, me, I want to change the content of the contract or the document, but it was already signed in digital signature technology. Then if I change the content of the contract or document, it will become invalid. And the good thing here is it will alert all of the people or all of the parties that there is someone who is trying to alter or modify the content of the contract or document. Next is it is cost effective. So instead of investing on papers, pens, and like other related things for that, so the digital technology it reduces the cost, and the only thing that we need to do is to find a good application or e-software that has a feature of digital signature technology. And for the next slide, here are the example of e-software or application that support digital signature technology. So this application of e-software, we can find this on the internet or we can download it to those application stores. So first, we have the SignNow. So SignNow is ideal to use if we have a small teams in our department or in our company. So next is Adobe Acrobat Reader. So this is used for occasionally signing documents on a PC. Next is the DocuSign. So it is ideal to use for businesses that signs lot of things, okay? Next is electronic marking. So it is a technique that the system automatically generates a unique mark that is tagged to each of the document copies. So it protects copyright as well as in electronic publishing where documents are printed, copied, or faxed. So electronic marking. So this is a technique that involves an automatically inserting a unique traceable mark or code into each copy of the document. So this can protect by discouraging unauthorized copying, distribution, or modification of the document. So one example of electronic marking is what we call the confidential PDF. So if you are wondering what is the meaning of PDF, so it is portable document format. So confidential portable document format is like a file that has been secured to prevent unauthorized access. So the mark we can insert here can be visible like a text or logo, and also it can also be invisible, that is hidden within the document's data. So those watermark in this document, so it can allows the original source or owners of the document to trace it back to the recipient in case there is sharing or copying of the document. Next is the security features of operating system. So it refers to the built-in mechanism and functionalities designed to enhance the security and protection of the software applications that run on it. So the data it processes and the system that it operates within. So example of security features of operating system is the antivirus and the firewall, okay? So antivirus software, so these security features protects our devices like phone, laptops, desktop by removing malware like viruses, worms, and trojans that can harm and threaten our security of our device. So one of the features that it can give is this can identify those suspicious files or application that are being entered on our devices, and it can notify us about those harmful files or application. Next is the firewall. So firewall is usually used in a large establishment like large businesses, corporations, government agencies, as well as in university. So in LSPU, I think we have our own firewall. So the firewall, it can prevent the cyber attacks and those hackers for accessing sensitive data that are stored on the servers of those large establishments. Okay? So we are now done with the first topics, and this is my learning check, but unfortunately we don't have listeners right now because it is a video presentation and not live reporting. So again, this is my learning check. Next is, with the second topic, we have the free software movement and the open source initiative. With the subtopic of the free software movement, the history of free software movement, the concept of copyleft, and the 6 key rights of open source software. So what is the free software movement? So it is a social movement with the goal of obtaining and guaranteeing certain freedoms for software users, namely the freedom to run the software, to study and change the software, and to redistribute copies with or without changes. So a free software movement, so when we say a social movement, it is like when people come together or they create unity together to work for a big change in society. So the free software movement is one such an effort focusing on giving everyone the freedom to use, change, and share software freely. So we are going to proceed with a timeline of the free software movement. So we are going to discuss how the free software movement was established and who established the free software movement and what are the influence of it today. Okay, so first is in 1970, it is the era of the hacker culture and academia, which is it focuses on the study, ethics, and communities that is associated with hackers and hacking ethics. So this time they started to develop the free software movement. Next is in 1983. So the man who named Richard Stallman launched the GNU project. So the GNU project has created a big impact to achieve the free software movement and to run freely the software, to copy and distribute it, and to study and modify. So the GNU project, it promotes software freedom and user control. So it has contributed many tools and programs to the world of free and open source. And in 1985, Richard Stallman finally established the Free Software Movement Foundation, or what we call the FSF. So its goal is to support the movement. So the SFF is to support the movement in a way of promoting the development of it year by year, and to document what this movement has been accomplished. And for 20th century, it is the time where the free software movement influenced our technology that led us to the adoption of open source software or the operating system, the web development, and the AI technology. Okay? So next is the open source initiative. So open source software, or the OSS communities, are an important type of virtual community today, where members convene online with a common goal of producing software that is valuable both to developers and for the general public using the open source software development OSSD methodology. So open source initiative are online groups where people, they work together to create software that anyone can use and improve. So they follow a method called open source software development OSSD to make software valuable for both developers and the public. Oh wait. So one example of online groups today that promotes an open source software is GitHub. So I think every one of us already know what the GitHub is. So it is an online platform where developers around the world collaborate to create, share, and improve software projects. So from that, it allows anyone to view, suggest changes, or contribute their own updates to make the software better for everyone. So next, open source initiative. So this movement increasing attention in organizations in terms of commercial. So for commercial, businesses use open source software to save money, innovate faster, and stay ahead of the competition. Second is for non-commercial. So those non-profits, they also rely on open source tools to work together efficiently and to keep the cost at low level while focusing on their motives or goal. Next is governmental. So governments choose also open source software to promote transparency and to ensure security, that is to reduce dependence on big companies. And also for us, individual consumers, so everyday people enjoy this free, customizable software that fits with our personal needs. Next is Copyleft. So Copyleft, it is embodied in GNU General Public License GPL. It has played a crucial role in the development of open source software communities. So essentially, Copyleft uses copyright law to ensure that the software remains free for users. So the GNU Public License or the GPL, it helps keep software free by ensuring anyone can use, modify, and share it. So it works by using copyright rules to make sure that any new software built from it stays free and open for others to use and improve. So while copyright typically restrict us how software can be used and shared, so copyleft flipped this idea. So it allows users to freely use, modify, and distribute the software as long as any derived work is also shared under the same terms. So if we have copyright, we also have copyleft. So in copyright, it restricts us on how we can use and share the software. But in copyleft, it promotes the freely used to modify and distribute the software. So it and for the meaning of that, as long as any derived work is also shared under the same open terms, so it means that, for example, if I make change to the software or create something new from it, I have to share this version in the same open way. So meaning I need to share the modified one version of the software. So this to make sure that everyone can keep using, modifying, and sharing the one that I modify just like the original. Next is the 6 key rights of the open source software. So all open source software grants users the following key rights. First is the right to full access to the source code. So if we are well educated enough to understand how the software works, or we can like intelligently modify the software, then we have the right to fully access the source code. Second is the right for anyone to run the program for any purpose without restriction. So meaning, even if it's the program is for commercial, for military, or for foreign, so anyone have the right to run the program. Also, no matter what social class you are belong with or what educational background you just attained, so anyone have the rights. Third is the right to modify the source code. So it means you can take the original software and make changes or like add it to the other projects that is created by other developers. So this gives you the freedom to adapt the software based on your needs or combine it with other tools. Just like what we did last year on our website project. So we get source code from the internet and we have the right to modify it and include it based on what our website needs. So like if we need a source code that is for like users login form, so we have the freedom to use the source code that came from the internet. Fourth is the right to distribute both the original software and the modified software. So we have the right to distribute the both original and the modified one. So but before we distribute, we have two things that we need to consider, which is the free software and freeware. So in free software, it is the free distribution of the software, meaning it doesn't collect payments or it does not permit sale. While in freeware, before we can distribute the original and modified one of the software, so we have to pay because it permits resale at any price. Fifth is the right to know about their open source rights. So it ensures, so it means that if you share software, you also share any changes you make under the same open terms, just like what I have said earlier during the discussion of the copyleft. So the GPL and other open source licenses make it clear to user that they have the right to access, to modify, and share the software freely. 6 is the obligation to distribute derivatives under copyleft. So any software modified under the GPL can be sold, but it must still be shared under the same open terms. That is to ensure that everyone can use, modify, and distribute it freely. So Richard Stallman's what he had accomplished for the free software movement, so it inspired developers to join the movement, and the GPL's copyleft make sure that all changes to the software remain open for everyone to benefit from. Okay? So again, this is my learning check for this topic. So we will now proceed to the next topic, which is the impact of censorship and freedom of speech on IT. So with the subtopic of the internet and ICTs and censorship. So how has the internet impacted your daily life, and what role do you think it plays in shaping society today? So this question supposedly be answered by my classmate, but unfortunately, it is a recorded video, so I think I'm going to answer it instead. So I think in today's generation, people are not going to live without internet. So now the internet is one of the powerful tools today that it can make our lives easier. So most of the problem in our life, you can find it the solution on the internet. Like for example, so like even in simple problems. So like for example, you can't find your ideal outfit on those physical stores. So what are you going to do? You're going to search it on the internet. Or you want to cook something but you don't know the recipe, then you will be going to search it to the internet, right? Or just simply looking for information. So internet is there to help us, okay? So we can see that it's hard to imagine life without it because it connects us to almost everything that we need, okay? So internet and ICTs. So the internet and ICTs are essential to everyday life, enhancing public debate and giving more people a voice. So however, there is a rising trend of restrictions on freedom of expression as states seek to control online discourse. So increasingly, private actors and international corporations such as Instagram, Google, Facebook, and X play a significant role in enabling ICTs, influencing how citizens can express themselves online and determining the rules of engagement in digital process. So the internet is a big part of our daily lives. So letting people share their ideas and connect with others. But some governments are starting to control what people can say online, saying it's to keep things safe or stop fake news. So this makes it harder for people to speak freely and share their opinions. So these international corporations, they have a big influence on how we can express ourselves online. So wherever there is an issue that circulates through online, we are aware and we have the freedom to share our thoughts or opinions. So the debate on protecting freedom of expression on ICTs centers on whether the internet needs new international laws or if current legislation suffices. So advocates for new laws argue that the internet's global and decentralized nature surpasses traditional jurisdiction and poses challenges like cybercrime. So there's a debate about whether the internet needs its own rules to protect freedom of expression or if current laws are enough. Example of the current laws are those privacy law, intellectual property act, copyright law, etc. So some argue that the internet is so different from other areas that it needs special laws or it needs to separate. So others believe that existing laws can still work and should be applied to the different online spaces as well. So the argument for new laws says the internet is global and spread out. So it can be controlled by one country or government only. Since people from all over the world use the internet, so it needs rules that apply everywhere, not just within one nation's borders. So this makes it hard for current laws, which are based on specific countries, to cover the entire internet. So human rights organizations often view the internet as another communication platform, suggesting existing laws can apply with updates. So critics of new laws warn they might weaken established human rights protection and lead to a fragmented internet. So the discussion highlights tensions between adapting to digital advancement and preserving universal rights. So current laws are having trouble keeping up with how quickly data moves and the growing problem of cybercrime. So some human rights groups, they think that the rules we already have should apply to the internet, but they might need some updates. However, the new laws could weaken our protection and split the internet into different rules for each country. So this debate, it shows us that we need to find a balance between protecting free speech and keeping the internet secure. So any new laws should be thought through carefully to make sure that they don't harm human rights or it create divisions between countries. So it's important to update the rules while keeping the internet open and connected, especially as we face challenges like cybercrime. Okay. So next is censorship. So censorship is the suppression of speech, public communication, or other information on the basis that such material is considered objectionable, harmful, sensitive, or inconvenient. Censorship can be conducted by governments, private institutions, and other controlling bodies. So censorship is when information, speech, or communication is restricted because it's seen as offensive, harmful, or inconvenient. So it can be carried out by governments, businesses, or other groups in control. So essentially, censorship limits what people can say, see, or hear based on certain rules or beliefs. So here are the example of censorship, which is website censorship. So under website censorship, we have child pornography. So child pornography is the creation, publication, or distribution of any material that depicts minors. So those persons who are under 18 years of age in a real or simulated sexual situation. Next is illegal goods. So for illegal goods, those are items or products that are prohibited by law to be produced, sold, or possessed. So for example, we have drugs like illegal narcotics, heroin, marijuana. Next is weapons. So those unauthorized firearms, explosive, or other dangerous weapons that are prohibited for civilian to use, or before we can have it we need to it needs special permits. So next is the endangered species. So products that is derived from protected wildlife, such as those exotic animal skins or medicines that made from endangered plants and animals. Third is illegal gambling. So illegal gambling, it refers to any form of gambling that is prohibited by law. So it is depend because there are some legal gambling like the regulated casinos, lotteries, or sports betting. So it becomes illegal when it occurs outside of those regulated frameworks or in violation of a specific laws. So we are now done with the third topic, and this is again my learning check for that topic. Fourth topic is all about the limitation to freedom of expression on the internet that has a subtopic of the countries that lack of free expression on the internet. So the internet is often seen as a way to promote democracy and freedom of speech, but it has many limitations due to technology and government rules. While it supports free speech in places like North America and Western Europe, many countries in Asia and Africa censor the internet. Limiting this freedom, it doesn't always work as tool for free expression around the world. So the internet is often praised as a powerful tool for freedom of speech and democracy. But in reality, it doesn't work this way everywhere. So while people in countries like United States or much of Europe, they can use the internet freely, share ideas, and express themselves. So this isn't the case in many parts of the world, especially in Asia or Africa. So in some countries, governments heavily control or censor online content, so they limit people's ability to speak openly. So this shows that for many people, the internet is not a place of free expression, so it is a place where their voices are controlled or silenced by those in power. So the promise of the internet as global platform for open communication only holds through certain parts of the world. So meaning not everyone in this world have the privilege to access global internet, that leaving many people without this freedom. So these are the example of some countries in Asia and Africa that limit the free expression on the internet. So we have first the North Korea. So global internet is used for government and by foreigners only. So in North Korea, only government officials or high-ranking people can only access the global internet. So the rest of the population, they use a domestic internet that only shows state-approved content. So meaning, this state-approved content, it all it it's it only promotes the government's views to glorify the leadership and blocks any opposing ideas or outside information. So the content, it includes the in state-run news, so like propaganda or the educational materials that support the regime's ideology of the North Korea. So next is in Uganda. So in Uganda, banned the radio cutaway and an internet satellite. So during February 2006, so Radio Cutaway is a radio station and an internet satellite TV also. So in Uganda, it got banned from Uganda government because they believe that this radio station and internet satellite during the presidential and parliamentary election was spreading malicious propaganda against the government through the Uganda Communication Council or UCC. So the government of Uganda, they believe that it can influence public opinion and create fake information during the elections. What they did is they regulate communication in Uganda, including information, communication technology or ICTs like the internet. So these regions that I have discussed is an example of how it limits the freedom of expression of the people on the internet, especially during sensitive political periods. We are now done with the fourth topic, and again, this is my learning check for that topic. So the last topic is all about the current intellectual property issues, with the subtopic of what is current intellectual property issues and what is plagiarism. So let's proceed. So intellectual property issues. So when it comes to the topic of the issues with intellectual property rights, the main issue is not the different kinds of illegal issues, or legal issues rather. So the primary issue is awareness of the rights and laws and treating them with sufficient importance. So the main problem with intellectual property right isn't just about the different legal issues, but about people not fully understanding, or valuing these rights. So many don't realize how important it is to respect these laws and protect creators' work from misuse. For example, like in India, so the biggest problem with intellectual property rights is that their people are not fully aware of these rights or don't see them as priority, even though they have a strong laws. So the enforcement is weak due to different gaps or weaknesses in the laws that allow people to just bypass rules, and convincing the courts and law enforcement to treat intellectual property step seriously, that is a big challenge. Next is violation of intellectual property. So first, we have creating a logo or name that is meant to confuse buyers into thinking they're buying the original brand. Second is recording video or music without authorization or copying copyrighted materials. Yes, even on a photocopier for private use. Third is copying another person's patent and marketing it as a new patent. Fourth is manufacturing patented goods without a license to do so. So plagiarism. So plagiarism is the act of stealing someone else's intellectual property, such as ideas, inventions, or original works, and passing it off as your own without crediting the creator. So intellectual property infringement can also occur through practices like trademark, counterfeiting, and copyright piracy, which can even harm the public, such as in the case of counterfeit manipulation. So, plagiarism is when someone takes another person's ideas or work, whether it's writing, inventions, or creative content, and it claims it as their own without giving credit. So, like this isn't just about stealing words. So it can also include things like using someone's logo, design, or even a new product idea without permission. So aside from plagiarism, so intellectual property theft can also involve counterfeiting products like those fake medication, which can be dangerous to consumers. So I have here an example of an issue that happened during 2022, which is about plagiarism of speech during graduation. So this one is happened way back here 2022, where this guy copied the content of the speech of this girl right here. So the girl's speech was happened way back 2009, while the guy speech it was happened way back 2022. So I remember I saw the videos of the two delivering the speech, and this guy, so he obviously copied everything, and the only thing that it makes little bit different is the words that he used. So he changed some a few words there and add some details to make it look different. So it shows here that the guy excuse is that it's not his intention to plagiarize the speech of this girl, and he believes that it is just a coincidence that they have the same topic to address with to their speech. But what the girl respond here is unintentional or accidental. Plagiarism is still plagiarism, which is right. So if you want to copy something, make sure that you take the credit of someone's work and not just copying it to make it on your own. So another example is this one, which is it was trending issue before about the allegedly stolen thesis concept. So what happened here is there are a group of mechanical engineering students. So they got trend because of their thesis project, which is the dual project powered rice dryer that help farmers during rainy harvest months. So in this photo, this is Christina and her group mates who originally developed the concept. So they accuse another group of using their idea without taking credit. So Christina team began their project way back August 2022, and it was successfully defended it in May 2023. So that time they were very proud of their work. So the concept of their thesis project is in a manual methods, like they use clay pots and charcoal to dry rice. while on the mechanical engineering student, they more on a technical side, which they used technology to their thesis. So later they found out that the similar concept was featured in the media as someone else's innovation. So other groups, the mechanical engineering student, they promised to acknowledge their contribution, but after claimed no acknowledgement was needed since the original project was not patented. So it is not plagiarism. So this left Christina and her group mates feeling disrespected, especially after her team was denied as a best thesis award, which was instead given to the second group, which is the mechanical engineering student. So what their university did is they released a statement saying that they are taking the allegation seriously and will conduct a thorough investigation to ensure fairness for both sides. So for Christina and her group, they said that this isn't just about recognition, it's about the principle of respecting hard work and original ideas of other. So this situation is served as a reminder for us that proper acknowledgement is very important, especially in academic and professional settings. So again, this is my learning check for this last topic. So that's all for my presentation, and thank you for listening.